Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today we're back with a video about all of the characters in the Dimension Mission Support Shop. There's actually a lot to choose from, and I think that some people out there are probably wondering how best to spend their Rift tokens, so I wanted to try and classify all of these characters into at least one category, rather than just ranking them sort of 1 to 34, or whatever it is, because that's not really helpful. I mean, there is definitely a one strongest character here, and probably a 34th weakest character. I'm looking at you, Maximus. But there's a lot more nuance here. And the thing that I actually wanted to focus on as well before we get into the lists and sort of the ways that I divided up the characters is that this is actually so much better than I originally thought it would be for new and intermediate players. Because with the old system, and again, I know people have some issues about the old system, but with the old system, with special missions, you would have to choose to farm one of the special mission characters. You would have to hope to get shifter biometrics for Gwenpool, Inferno, or Vulture. And even if you didn't need those characters, even if you had them all maxed out and you wanted to spend your energy elsewhere, you didn't really feel like missing out on all of the obelisks and the level 4 XP chips and the other valuable things that the special mission gave you, even if you didn't need any of their biometrics. Now, people don't usually turn down random bios, so I know it was a good source of bios anyways, but technically you could get just as many bios from playing World Boss Invasion and other game modes. So I do think that this is a much better way of doing things, because not only does it allows you, the player, to focus farm one character at a time, but it also means you don't have to farm those characters. For example, the special mission quest packs. So many people told me they had the tier 2, Squirrel Girl, White Tiger, Wiccan, Hulkling, Songbird, and they were never planning on using these characters ever. But they had to spend the gold, the Nornstones, the biometrics. I mean, it's not a crazy amount of resources, but now you don't have to do that anymore. You can just choose to ignore these characters forever. Well, actually, ignore them until they get a rework. And that's the other beautiful thing about me making a video like this, is I can steer you clear and help you dodge all of these garbage characters, because there's quite a few hidden in here, so that you never spend a single Rift token on them. Drax. And so, until we can put enough pressure on Marvel Future Fight to rework these characters. So right off the bat, I just want to cover the 4 strongest characters, in my opinion. Characters that you can just use your Rift tokens on, level them up to 6 stars, tier 2 them, and they will start being useful to you. They don't need a uniform, they don't need a CTP, they don't need anything like that. Now, before we get into the whole list, well, I'll go through the list anyways. It's Warpath, Bishop, Angel, and Wasp. Now, before we get into these 4 characters, I want to note that all of these characters here are actually half-cost tier 2s. So they actually reduced their cost when they created the Dimension missions, which means that instead of costing 1, 2, and then 3 biometrics for their gears, instead of costing 150 biometrics for getting them to tier 2, it costs half. So it's 75 to tier 2. Instead of being 2.5 million gold, it is 1.25 million gold, whatever half of 2.5 million is, and so on and so forth. Everything is halved, so that's really great. Now, Warpath, Bishop, Angel, and Wasp, they have different valuable features, but basically it boils down to whether you need them for sort of World Boss and Shadowland, or whether you need them for PvP. Wasp and Angel are good options for PvP because they both have, Wasp at tier 2 has the passive, and Angel at tier 1 or tier 2 has the leadership that makes him really good for timeline battle. He's also a good standalone character, and he can do content on his own because he does enough damage, whereas Wasp can't. In the case of Bishop, he's a good PvP character, but he needs a lot of investment, but he can go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel, so that's kind of a nice way of, being rewarded for your investment. And then Warpath is a good World Boss Ultimate Striker, and he's decent himself for World Boss in Shadowland because of his multiple all defense down skills. So we got the sort of good characters out of the way. You should probably farm those characters first, because they're going to help push your account. So what comes next? Characters that are strong when you get their uniform. Now, this is an important distinction to make, because I know you guys are, trying to save your crystals up for deluxe packs or for other things, so you don't have crystals to throw around constantly. So characters that are good with their uniform We can start off with Giant Man. He's only good when you get his Pimptron uniform, and a lot of people are going to be getting the Pimptron uniform because of the Ant-Man Legendary Battle, which gives you a CTP selector, which you can use to get like a Rage CTP or a Regen CTP. He's okay. He's not amazing, but he's definitely useful with his Pimptron uniform. Moving over to the Blast class, Moon Girl is good with her uniform, as is Inferno and Crystal. Now again, their value is going to shift. They're not exactly all the same power level, but they are good characters once you get their uniforms equipped, and they can even be useful without their uniforms, but some of them can't, i.e. Mysterio. Pretty garbage character without his uniform, but actually very good with his MCU uniform, so that is something to look out for. Then in the speed class, there's really only one, and it's Ant-Man. You have to get the endgame uniform for the choo-choo train, but then he becomes a good, self-sufficient character that can do damage on his own. And then finally we have Loki and Ronan. Loki is a little bit better without his uniform than most characters that I've listed, but he's still pretty weak compared to what you get when you get his Ragnarok uniform, and you can cash in other valuable rewards from the Thor Legendary Battle when you mythic that Ragnarok uniform. Although it has been a long time, so Loki is sort of due for another uniform. You can take that into consideration as well. And then Ronan is complete trash without his uniform, but with his MCU uniform, his latest Marvel Captain Marvel uniform, he is actually a pretty decent character. So that's the second list of characters that are good with their uniforms. Now I just want to list off characters with or without their uniforms, and I'll make note of it, that are good for Shadowlands. So you can see the list right here. I'm not going to double up on the ones that I've already talked about, so you can basically just listen again for the information that I gave you about Loki, about Mysterio, about Giant Man, Pimptron, and Ronan. That's exactly the same information. So Ultron, you don't necessarily need to get him a uniform, but his uniforms cost gold instead of crystals, so it's not really a big investment, and he's a decent sort of low to medium level Shadowland. That's like 1 to 15 type situation. You can bring him a bit higher, but he is going to start to struggle, especially if you don't have really good cards. You also have Yellow Jacket, again, sort of a mid to medium to medium high stages for Shadowland, but definitely still keep him within stage 30 because he does lose a lot of value later on, and he just doesn't have a ton of punching power. If we move down the list, we have Sandman and Vulture, both decent for medium level Shadowland. And then Kraven, I would say he's more like low to medium level Shadowland, but still useful. And the reason why I single out villains for Shadowland is, of course, because there's a lot of villain stages in Shadowland, especially in stages 1 to 30, and that's often the biggest question and the biggest struggle that I see newer players who are trying to tackle Shadowland experiencing. Cynicalex, I used up all my good characters, I used up all my universals, I don't have anybody left for this villain stage. Well, you've got to invest in a few more villains. You can double dip by investing in strong villains like Morgan Le Fay or Minerva that are good characters for other content, but if you still need more after the fact, definitely go to the support shop and consider spending your Rift tokens to rank up some of these characters. In terms of those characters that I just listed, those villains, I'll put up another ranking, and this would be at their highest potential. So if you give Mysterio his uniform, if you give Ronan his uniform and you max them out, they immediately rise to the top of those 9 characters, and then Yellow Jacket, Ultron, and Kraven round out the bottom of that list. Next up, we have characters that are useful for other things, other than, doing their own content and doing damage, or being support in the way of someone like Angel or Wasp. We have just leadership characters. So this would just be buffing your other characters for content. So I don't want to actually have to scroll through them because they're all over the map, so I'll just list them out here. We've got Gorgon at 45% physical attack. We've got Ronan, 36 energy and physical all attack. For universals, it jumps up to 50% all attack, 36% all defense with his uniform. Then we have Moon Girl with the 36% all attack, Ultron and Wiccan with the 24% all attack. We've got a lot of energy attack leads, as you can see. We have a couple of physical attack leads in Elsa and Lizard, and then we have Wasp, who has sort of a mixture of all attack, all defense, and all speed. So yeah, those are basically all of the valuable characters if you're going to squeeze every last drop of value out of these characters from the support shop. So that leaves a lot of characters. What am I going to do, and what are you going to do with Drax, Groot, Yondu, Nebula, Sister Grimm, White Tiger, Hulkling, Songbird, Squirrel Girl, Gwenpool, Karnak, Maximus, Rhino, and Kate Bishop? Well, there's two things you can do with these characters. One, you can completely and utterly ignore them, because with 200 plus characters in Marvel Future Fight, you definitely do not need to level up any of those characters, except maybe for World Boss Ultimate first clears. I haven't cross-referenced that, so don't take my word for it, but if you don't need any of those characters for any of the World Boss stages, although I'm starting to think you might need Drax at least for one stage, and possibly Gwenpool. Anyways, you can just skip them. They're not unique or powerful in any way that's going to make a noticeable difference on your roster. There are a couple of exceptions, like for example, Nebula. If you get her uniform and you max it out, she can be useful for like stage 50-ish Shadowland, but that's a heavy investment for a character that's really only going to be useful in 1 or 2 places. Same thing goes for characters like Kate Bishop at a lower level, maybe like a 30 or 40 of Shadowland. Same thing goes for Gwenpool. They definitely have value, and if you just want to mess around with Gwenpool in Shadowland, be my guest. She's a good character who can heal, and she has some decent AoE. But I think once you've leveled up and once you've tier 2'd all of those other characters that I've mentioned, you know, Bishop, Warpath, Loki, Ronan, etc., you're probably gonna want to start spending your tokens, your Rift tokens, on other things like the uniform upgrade kits or like some of these chests. So hopefully this breakdown of all of the characters in the rank up material tab of the support shop has helped you out. Let me know what you'd like to see next on the channel. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.